my parents were like kind of dismayed that I crossed state lines, but I said, well, you know, if you're going to go there, you know, you should work to re-elect Bill Clinton because he opened access to affordability for college student loans, and that was one of the big reasons why I was able to go to college.
Right.
I was the first, first generation college grad in my family, and so part of going to Ohio was getting involved. Now I was a chemistry undergrad major, so I never thought like I was just doing this for fun, and you know, to do my civic duty, and then got really active locally on the Clinton campaign, and then really fell in love with the city because Dayton is a place that is very excited when young people get engaged, and I really felt that and felt really at home, and so there you go. That's how I got started.
That's great. That's great. Here's Spicer, what about you?
You know, it's interesting. My background is in education, and I started out as a classroom teacher teaching technology and engineering, and I have an engineering background, and I taught for a number of years, went on to become a department chair, and worked at the State Department of Education, and did my doctoral work in leadership, and so I just decided to keep moving to different leadership roles, and I was invited to the Museum of Science to start a new division in the museum, the National Center for Technological Literacy, and which was a startup division of the Museum of Science in Boston, led by our former president. And that work was exciting and wonderful and brought me all around the country. The museum in Fort Worth, we partnered with them on a number of initiatives. And but I always kept a hand in local politics. I mean, I was a state delegate to the Democratic Convention. I always was involved in tangential and, in some form or another, working on the campaigns or phone banking. And locally, when we were a town, I actually was a town meeting member and went on to serve on the Ways and Means Committee and so forth. So, it sort of, politics followed me. If you would have said 10 years ago, did you see yourself doing this? I would have said, absolutely not. And but when we had the opportunity to become a city, and then when we voted to be a city, a friend said, "Yvonne, would you ever consider running?" And I, thought about it, prayed about it, said, if not me, then who?
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? I have a wealth of knowledge on schools and so forth. So that's how I got here, and the rest is kind of history, because I had no experience running a campaign, a full-fledged campaign, ever. Raising money, all that other stuff.
And I mean, so many times too, when we're talking about recruiting women to run, having somebody else sort of tap you on the shoulder and say, have you thought about this? Is this something you would do? Mayor Price, I read that Kay Granger, former congressman, who's also the former former mayor of Fort Worth also, right?
And she's the only other woman mayor.
She was instrumental in sparking your interest.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
We were several years apart. I mean, Kay's been in Congress for 24 years, and I've been in the mayor's office for 9 years now. I'm from Fort Worth and born and raised there, and at the time when I was growing up, Fort Worth was a sleepy little town of about 250,000 people. Now we're 900,000 people, 13th largest city in the nation. And just a bit of tidbit for you, talking about women mayors, for 4 or 5 years, I was the only woman mayor in the top 25. Now there are 3 of us. So it is growing, not at all levels, but it's growing even faster, percentage-wise. It's big. I've never set out to be in politics, and I don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself a public servant. The day I start making votes on policy that affects our employees on my next election is the day I'm going home. But my parents always said, you have to take your talents, take your personality, take whatever you have and give something back to your community. And I had a business of my own, and I was a committed community volunteer. I had my business, and I did junior league stuff and sorority stuff and United Way, and our church taught Sunday school and all. And then I had this business that put me in contact with Tarrant County's tax assessor, which is an elected position also. And it was absolutely the worst run office I had ever seen. And Dan, my degree is in science also, in biology.
Oh, yeah.
You make plans and God laughs.
Right.
But I kept saying to my clients, this office is awful. Somebody ought to fix it. And finally, one day, one of my big clients said, that somebody ought to be you. So I went home and said to my husband what he had said, and he said, yeah, you ought to do it. And my children said, "You ought to do this, Mother." You know, we'd never had anybody, well, my great-grandfather was county judge, but we hadn't had anybody else. And so I did, and we cleaned that office up. We're recognized nationwide, developed a big following. And the reason I laughed and said no other tax assessors become mayors, because people write huge checks for their property taxes to the tax assessor. And generally, they don't call you, I got called the tax ASS, tax Nazi, so it's not generally very favorable. But because we had such good luck and the service changed, people loved it. So I got recruited then. When the former mayor retired, people said, "You have to come take your skills and clean up the city for work." His finances were in terrible shape. Commitment departments were in terrible shape. I said no for 6 months. My family said, no, that's a different level, because big city mayors, well, small city mayors even, we all work on average 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Finally, after a lot of prayer and a lot of community conversations, 6 months later, I said, okay, and I keep getting reelected despite how often I try not to. But it's an incredible opportunity for women to have that opportunity. And I'm like you said, I'd like for these conversations to go away, so we're just talking about good public servants and not whether you're male or female, or whether what your gender is or your race or anything. And someday it'll come to that. But we have to set a good example for other young women who can look at you and go, either she's crazy, I don't want to be a bit like her, or yeah, I think she's great.
Yeah. Mayor Whaley, organizations like Emily's List are so important in recruiting women, and Mayor Price, I know you did Emerge America, a campaign training program. They actually tried to get you to run for Congress.
They did.
And you were like 26 or something years old.
Yeah, so it was 2002, so yeah, so 2003, so I was like 26 years old. They actually, the congressman who is now in Congress still today was just elected. And so he'd been he would be a first-term congressman. So they were looking for a woman that had no baggage and had no record. And so they came, of course, 26-year-old person would definitely be that. And they came to see me, and I had not thought of running for office at all. And I'd worked on campaigns, but never really considered being the person that runs for office. And I'm really grateful that they came to see me, because I would never have considered. Now, they said, you'll just need to raise $1 million, and that would have been putting, I might have said, oh, you need to put a man on the moon, too, right? Yeah. So I thought about it, had my friends and family come together, and I was like, oh, I don't want to run for Congress. But I called them back and said, oh, I'm really interested in running for city commission, which is our city council. Thanks for helping me out. And they were not interested in that at all. So, then when I ran in 2013 for mayor, they did endorse in mayor's races, and so it was, I was very proud of that, since they were the reason that I even started considering running for office in the first place.
But the fundraising component is still a big hindrance, for men and women, really. But especially, I think, for women, and I think it's getting better, but just that, the obstacle of having to raise all that money.
Yeah, I think most women just aren't accustomed, unless you're asking for your favorite charity. You're used to doing that, but you're not accustomed to going out and asking for money for yourself.
Right.
Most women just don't do it when they've got a business startup. You either start real small and build it, or you borrow it from the bank or somebody. And that's the hardest thing I ever had to do. And when I ran the first time for tax assessor, my political consultant said, okay, you need $500,000 to run for this office. And I said, how on earth am I ever going to raise that for a county office? And he said, go to one of your clients and ask him to give you $5,000. And this was in 2000. And I said, $5,000? He won't do that. He said, he won't if you don't ask. Oh my gosh. So I went to see one of my largest clients that I'd had for about 20 years, I guess, or 17 years. And I said, Lynn, I'm thinking of running for tax assessor. And he said, it's a good thing you are. We've been going to push you. You weren't. I said, and I have to fund my campaign. And I said, I need $5,000. And he never flinched. He said, can I give it to you in 2 checks? I'll give you $2,500 today, and next week I'll give you $2,500. And since then, I've just learned the real key thing is you got to ask. Because people want good people to run. They really do. And if they've got the money, or they've got the ability, and just as much as money, you got to have somebody knocking on those doors.
Right.
And used to working on the telephone, and still on the phone a certain amount. But people, truly, you got to have faith in yourself. And that was my biggest confidence booster. I thought, if he can do that, then my other friends will too. And I never had anybody turn me down. They always say, I can't give you that much, but I can give you this, or I can't give you that, but I'll knock doors, and I know who can give you that much. So it begins to network down, I think, don't y'all?
Yes.
I do. Yeah, I'm not as lucky as you, Betsy. I've had people turn me down.
Well, I've been doing this now a lot longer than you have.
Well, it's so interesting too, the whole notion of the endorsements and I am an Emerge graduate, but I also am endorsed by Emily's list too. And the moment they endorsed me, the checks started coming from all over the country. It was really amazing to see how powerful that endorsement is. And truly, I grew up probably like many of us, it's rude to ask people for money. And the last thing you do is ask someone for money. And so that was something that was really hard. And now my race didn't cost as much. It was probably about $100,000.
My mayor's race was almost $1 million.
Yes.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Fort Worth.
No. So it was about $100,000. I mean, in my city, 70,000 people. It's a small city. But that was huge money to be raised in context in my city. People were not used to raising that kind of money. And so, but it is a daunting thing, and it's the ongoing thing that you have to keep doing is keeping the coffers filled, because I have to if I choose to run for office again, I got to make sure that I, have some funds to do so. But I do find it hard, and I often say, especially to women, one of the hardest things is for another woman to ask you to donate to her campaign, and even if it's $20, if you make that effort, that helps, and get all your friends to help. It is good for us to, I looked at who got behind me, and it was women. Women came out in full force for me. And, and the young women, seniors, that was a real training factor. So we have to learn to help lift each other up as we go along. And my hope as a mayor, as I climb up the ladder, that I'm pulling someone else along. And I'm passing the baton, because I can only be mayor another 10 years. Our charter, I can only be mayor 12 consecutive years. So I got 10 years, and then I'm going to pass the baton. But I want to make sure there's a cadre of women behind me that I can, here you go, and I can be happily passing that baton. But in the interim, I want to hold this seat, and you got to help me stay in this seat.
And women make the best volunteers. They do. They'll get out and walk blocks and go to Sunday school classes and go to PTAs and go to their business, and they'll strong arm their fellow workers and their fellow friends to go vote for who they support.
Being a former classroom teacher, I taught high school. So a number of my students are now young adults in my community with children of their own. So they had a whole Facebook teacher page, former students of Spicer for Spicer. And so, they actually campaigned for me and everything too. So it's really wonderful.
And I have 3 grown children, and my grown children and their friends. And after I was elected the first time, and I was always the one driving them around to all their sporting events and doing things on the weekend. And after I was elected and had served for 2 or 3 weeks, we were all over town, and all these young men and women had come running up to me and saying, Mom, we're so glad we got elected. Finally, one of my security guards looked at me and said, exactly how many children do you have? So the whole city worked and owe me.
Absolutely.
Mayor Whaley, how important is that sort of bench of that next generation? I know you do a lot of work with young women and trying to inspire them to get involved in politics.
I think it's really, really important. When you cite these numbers, especially in executive office,
right.
We have, we're starting to see in judicial races that actually, at least in Ohio, that it's an advantage to be a woman. Like both parties are trying to run women as fast as possible on judicial races because they actually are doing better. And then on legislative races, we're starting to see that have impact. That it's almost equal with legislative, because if you think of the words on a legislature, what do you want? You want consensus, bringing people together.
Right.
Yeah. And then with the words that they use for an executive, a lot of time they're gendered male, and so
make decisions,
take charge, get it done. Women do that better than men. But anyway, but I think I'm not the first woman mayor of Dayton. I'm not a first generation elected official that's a woman. People came before me that did that work, and so it's easier for me than it was for them. And so our job is to continue to grow that group of women so that way it's easier for them than it is for me. And so we've done lots of work locally. For example, we started this Women's Leadership Collaborative of Greater Dayton because we really want to, not only in elected office, but just in business and nonprofit, like ways that we can encourage women to take that leadership role, because I think we're socialized to not take it. And so, breaking those cultural norms, I think is really, really important. And I find the younger generation much more eager to do it. And so I think that's really exciting. So it's a benefit to me to get to do that work because I get energy from young women.
Yeah.
And then I'm also really proud of City Hall. While I serve with 4 commissioners and they're all dudes, the leadership of City Hall is women. So my city manager is a woman, my law director is a woman, and so the people making decisions every day, as we went to the crisis of last year, were mostly women that were driving those conversations, and I think that made a big difference too.
And so as you're in this sort of executive role, how do you all think about balancing sort of that need to be tough? There's a quote that Jane Swift, who was the interim governor of Massachusetts, had that it's one of my favorite quotes because I think it shows the predicament. She said, if they think you're nice, they think you can't run their state, and if they think you can run their state, they worry you're not nice, right? And so how do you all, in that executive component, sort of bridge that together and function in an area where you do have to be tough? You have crises that are going on, you have to take charge, but yet some of that those gendered issues are out there.
Oh, I have a signature thing, pearls.
Yep.
And when you have no hair, you have to make sure you have your right touch of things that you would like to put on. And the conversation is usually about what she has on. Oh my goodness, what is that? What did she wear today? And here, this is the other thing too. The familiarity thing, and now Betsy, from being from the South, she probably understands is that it's somewhat rude to walk up to someone and call them by their first name unless you've given permission or you've had a relationship with them. And so people would come into the office and I need to see Yvonne, and my staff would say, Dr. Spicer can't see you right now. And so they've established that protocol of we teach people how we wish to be treated. And that's one thing that I do establish. And I also think you can hold your own space, which I do very well, and do it very respectfully, but also very firmly. And that has been, and of course you're going to be tested and tried. And I said, okay, you don't want the Brooklyn kid to come out. You don't want to see her. You don't want to see her. But you know what? I don't let her out because at the end of the day, being a teacher, that has also helped me navigate so many things because you're looking at, is this person here to give or to take, or is this person here to argue? Do they want to just vent about something? And so you negotiate that relationship, and I do that on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and it's trying. But I also, in the words of a former First Lady, when they go low, I stay high.
Right.
I stay very high. Well, no matter what they say on social media, what meme they put on there, okay. I don't respond to it at all. So.
Yeah, and we've always had a saying, you don't have to be the classic B to get your point across. You can kill them with kindness and let them know you've got to be firm and you've got to know when to be tough and you've got to know when to mother. And I'm old enough, I do mother, and y'all do too, I'm sure. You do mother people occasionally. But mostly you've got to listen and you've got to be at the table. I've spent 95% of my adult life in business that's a man's world. First, my title company, which was auto industry, then as tax assessor, they're all men at the time I was elected, and then as mayors, they're just not that many percentage-wise. And you just learn. You must speak up for yourself, because if you don't, no one else will. But mostly, you have to have a passion for what you're doing, because that passion comes through. If it's really in your heart, and you're thinking with your head, it'll come through and you'll be firm with what you're doing. And you have to outwork them. I know for a fact that women have to work twice as hard as men. And there's somebody said, what if I lose? I said, you won't lose as long as you outwork everybody else in the race. You may not have as much money, But if you outwork them, you'll win, because people love that hard work. And if you don't, you'll learn something from it.
Yeah, I think what Mayor Price and Mayor Spicer said is really true. I think what's exciting right now, again, is because there's more and more women getting elected, it can be more and more broad, and there's no one way to lead as a woman, and that's been really, even in the past 10 years, I've seen it just really grow. There's a nonpartisan group called the Barbara Lee Foundation that works particularly on executive leadership, both for Democrats and Republicans. And they do studies every single year about what kind of things people want women leaders to be, particularly in executive roles. And I've used them quite a bit. And they just last month released a poll about this work. And it's great. What I'm most excited to see is someone who's followed them over the past decade, is how much more broad and allowable it's gotten, and the role for women to lead the way they want, as long as it's authentic, is coming through. And so I think that's really, I feel like we're starting to break ground there because of all the great work that women have been doing all across the
But you've
country.
spoken out and taken to task your local paper when you
Yes.
had the State of the City speech, and
Yeah.
they wrote something about either what you were wearing
Right.
or something, and you were like, wait a minute, and
Right.
you called them right out on it.
So, I hate clothing. I'm not interested in any of that. Like, if there was I went to an all-girls school with a uniform, if I could go back to those days. So, and the Lee Foundation helped with this.
Yeah.
So when I was elected, and I don't know if this is the case today, but this was definitely 6 years ago, I noticed that when women electeds, when papers or anybody talked about their clothing, it took away their ability to lead. And you really, as a woman, have to protect at all costs your ability to lead. Because it's really not about being liked, it's about being respected. And there's a big difference in that. And so I, had my first State of the City, and been elected 60 days. And the trolls come out and say all kinds of crazy stuff about me. And then the paper covers this Facebook messaging, which is, we could have another panel on local journalism. And it was a woman reporter that had done it, who I had known. And so I had decided, I knew we reached out to the Lee Foundation. They're like, oh, no, you've got to just hit it out. And so we attacked the paper really hard. You can talk a lot about me, but you're not going to talk about how I look or what my clothes are, and really push that out. And I'll tell you what, nobody's ever talked about my clothing since, ever. And I think it's really important. And I've been really cognizant of that I've never talked about what I wear. And I make sure that no journalist talks about what I wear either, because they sure as hell don't do it to men.
Yeah.
And so the minute...
But you just have to shut it down.
Yes, the minute a woman elected starts doing it, I get nervous for them, because I've seen it in examples where that's taken away their ability to lead. Now, I don't know if that can change over time, but certainly in this time and place, I think that's really important for women to know.
I think that's critically important, but there is a fine line with women in clothes. You have to look the part. If the man in the boardroom comes in a suit and tie and polished shoes, you better darn sure make sure that you show up in an appropriate suit and heels with the pearls, or whatever you choose to wear. I don't wear pearls all the time, but I do wear them a lot because I don't have much hair either. But I have the light clothes, but you don't tolerate people writing just about your clothes.
Yeah, I think
They have to talk about your leadership.
Right.
And you have to, and I think women bring to the table a much more transparent piece too, because you're not afraid to call people out on it.
It's interesting too, is that the local journalists, kind of poke fun at the fact that I have a doctorate, and said, well, you're not really a doctor because you're not a medical doctor. I said, oh my, someone needs to get educated on how one gets to use that title. And it's the kind of thing where I won't shy away from it.
Right.
Because I said, it is something that I'm pretty proud of, the fact that I can be an inspiration to other young women. You can be the mayor, you can be a doctor, you can be a classroom teacher, you can be a kid that grew up in poverty. And I'm all of that. So there's a journey that I'm trying to make sure other people, and young people especially, can see that your beginning is not the end of your story. and there's more to it. And so that's the kind of thing too, that kind of shaming for whatever reason, whether, education shaming somebody, doesn't that sound really ridiculous to me? So, but that's the kind of pettiness that goes on that, you have to rise above it, and I try to use every opportunity I can to especially speak to young people. I love speaking to young people for that reason, because, I may be in this seat, but there's a story that comes before it, and there's work that went into getting to the seat. A lot of hard work.
Mayor Price, have you had to deal with issues in the media that are gendered or sexist as you've seen it, as you've been covering?
Not so much.
Yeah.
Probably because I'm older than a lot of you, but what they do tend to cover, and I'm all right with that now. I think they cover, she's a grandmother to 5 and one on the way, or she's 70 years old, and I always would go, why don't you list the men's age? But they list it, and it doesn't bother me like it did when I was y'all's age for them to say that, because I've matured into it, but not too much anymore, not as mayor as much, because they know me, they knew me as tax assessor, but I had it when I was tax assessor. What's a woman with a science degree doing as our tax assessor? I have a business second to, minor too, but it was, and when I ran for mayor, there was one other woman, former council member, and then it was like, why does a woman think she can do this who hasn't served on council? Oh, that doesn't make any difference. It's how you lead, it's not what your past service has been. So some, but not, not too much.
Yeah.
They know I'm like, man, I'll come back out.
Have you all found other female mayors to be a support system?
Absolutely, yes. Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
It's so interesting because in my state, there's not a lot of mayors. There's only 40 mayors in the state of Massachusetts, because we have a lot of cities and towns. So they have town managers. So I actually meet with a cohort of neighboring women who are Ruth Ann Fuller is a mayor of Newton. There's only 2 of us that are mayors, but the rest of them are town managers. But they're in leadership. They're leading their respective communities. And then there's another tier of mayors. There's the statewide mayors meeting, which I participate in. And then there's a whole other tier of African-American women mayors that I also collaborate with too. And that's the kind of thing too, because there's different levels of dynamics that go on there, that having that support network. I personally love coming to the U.S. Mayors Conference, because I studied the book. Oh, who's coming? Oh, Nan's coming. Oh, Max is coming. I just love seeing my sister mayors coming together and having that moment with each other. So
and
that makes me smile.
Women's group at U.S. Conference of Mayors too.
Yep, we do.
It does incredible work.
And do you find that mayors are able to maybe work across party lines a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean,
most of us don't run
Yeah,
as partisan.
Right, we're not
Clearly,
partisan
you
races.
figured out who the Republican is up here. And 2 Dems and 1 Republican, but none of it. Do any one of y'all run partisan? No.
Yeah.
Very few mayors run partisan. People know whether you lean a little right or lean a little left, but the reality of it is, in a city, potholes don't care which party you are. They don't care what color you are, or whether you're male or female or gay or lesbian. And 911 calls don't either, because good governance at the local level, and it ought to be this way at the State House in Washington too, and it's wheels off, as you know. Things don't wait, and it has to happen in the middle. You have to be collaborative and learn to work together with people whose opinions are different. And I think that's the beauty, particularly of other women mayors, but of everybody. You learn to listen. There's a reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much.
And I'll say this too, particularly with the Conference of Mayors and Women Mayors, Betsy's been a great leader and a woman mayor that we all look up to. Big city mayor, in Texas where you don't mess around with anybody down there. And, after we had the shooting in El Paso and Dayton in August, and the mayors came together to vote bipartisanly to try to get some movement through in Washington, D.C. We still haven't been successful. Doesn't mean we ever give up. But I'll tell you what.
We're not going to quit.
Yeah, we never quit. I'll tell you what, one of my most meaningful memories is being in the hallway and Betsy saying, girl, you did good. And so there's, just getting that support from each other just means a lot. It's a big deal.
I want to ask you too, Mayor Whaley, about that, because you really, I mean, that was a time where, I mean, you shot up in terms of all of a sudden the media pressure was on you. You're managing a crisis, all eyes are on you. You're at the White House, you're doing news conferences. What was that like just for you in terms of leadership, and what did you learn from that, if anything, about your own leadership skills in that crisis? Because you were so lauded of exerting your leadership skills and doing such a terrific job.
Yeah.
And,
She deserves it.
On a topic that's just awful.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the fellow mayors, I mean, were
Yeah.
really amazing during that process. I think in the first 24 hours, I think there were like 71 mayors that reached out
Wow.
and texted or called me and like really gave me support, because so many have gone through it too.
Yeah.
And they gave good advice about getting through a crisis
Yeah.
and what to do. And you know, honestly, I paid a lot of attention inside the Conference of Mayors when other mayors would talk about these sorts of crises, what happened, and those little bits of lessons helped me get through that. I think that was really, really important. So you don't want this ever to happen to your community, but you want to be prepared. And I think we all listen to each other and learn from each other, and that was really, really helpful to me. I have to tell you, you get through it. Like you know, for the first, somebody said, okay, the first 24 hours are the most important. So you get through the first 24 hours. The issue for me was like the Donald Trump stuff came on Wednesday, so I had to like figure out for the next 72 hours. And I'm in a county that voted 50%, like 50.4% for Donald Trump and 49.6% for Hillary Clinton. And so, I mean, everybody's got an opinion about the man. They either love him or hate him. There's not a lot of middle ground here. And so when you're trying to bring a community together, that's a big challenge to have somebody it's not really helpful. So how to like get them to be helpful, how to work through that. So it was days of media coverage. I did feel a little bit, though, I have to say, Dayton, as always, in Ohio, Ohio cities are always undervalued.
Yeah.
And so, the national media comes, and I really got this sense they'd be like, oh, like, you speak in complete sentences, and you can, like, talk to the TV. And I kind of felt like, well, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. I do that every day. So I did feel like, and I'm fine with that, because I'm always preferred low bars, and surprised to be undervalued. Right, exactly. But I did kind of feel like there was a bit of that in that moment. And look, I did it. We decided to do all the national media and be really aggressive about it because we want change. Like, the people of Dayton, called that night to do something. They want change. And so if that means that we nearly pass out, doing as much media as possible to try to get there, we're going to do that because we haven't seen any movement yet.
I thought it was clear, too, that you had a very good team helping you.
Thank you.
Nan came on and was very composed and always well-spoken. And you are well-spoken on your own anyway, but when you're in a crisis or you're managing two big events, you're as good as you ought to be, but you're better because you have a good team helping you.
Oh, absolutely.
I just had to look kind of back at you and think she's got a really good team helping her.
Sure do.
Because when you're on the verge of exhaustion,
Yeah.
it's those people behind you that you put together that good team who will hold you up.
Right, they've been terrific. My police chief was amazing, and as I mentioned, the women that are in leadership with me at City Hall. Keep in mind too, this 2019 was a crazy year because we started with the white supremacy rally in May, and then 2 days later we had like 14 tornadoes go through Dayton, and 19 tornadoes go through Ohio in a year normally, so 14 in one night, and then we had the mass shooting. So we just had a very strange number of black swans. And really, we kind of backing up, we said, okay, these are like national issues like coming to sit locally, and how we really work to manage them is what we're finding. And it sits in mayor's desks. But I have to say, the first 21 days of 2020 have been lovely. Love 2020. So, but thank you.
Yeah. So I want to be sure to save some time for questions from you guys. So start thinking of those.
You haven't figured out that this group can talk.
Appreciate it.
And I think before we go to questions, I just want to ask each of you just for advice that you have for young women here that may be interested in politics, what advice you have for them.
So my advice is if you want to run for office, get back home. Get back home right away. Quite frankly, I know it's like tantalizing to be in Washington, D.C., especially if you're interested in politics. You're going to have a greater impact back home.
Finish school.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's what I mean. I'm sorry. Yeah, of course. But like, get back there and have a plan to really make an impact. You're young. You're interested in public service, and there is such a need for strong people that are interested in public service out in our communities. And so, and you'll make a bigger impact. I would argue, deciding at a young age, like, hey, I know I want to work in, government, maybe it's national down the road, but starting in local, and I think we are all of the mindset that local is the only place that's really working right now. There are huge opportunities, and as soon as you get your degree, I'd be heading to those places. Also, we have a tendency to be more affordable unless you're from New York or San Francisco, and there's just a great amount of opportunities. So that'd be my big advice to you.
And I would add on to try to do internships, and because I think it is one of the things that I always enjoyed hosting, even at the museum, was interns, and I had a number of them. And it's exciting for me because I always challenge all of my interns. You each have to teach me something. And I, in turn, will share with you what I know. But that's how I learned how Twitter, and I learned Snapchat.
Yeah.
All from my interns.
TikTok.
So I need TikTok now. But these are the places, and I agree wholeheartely, is that everything happens locally. And if you're passionate about something, whether it's women's rights, run with it, because there's an opportunity to work with a mayor, and I welcome any one of you to say, you know what, maybe Mayor's Crisis could use me in Framingham, and I'm more than happy to host, an intern too. So that's the one thing I would definitely say is critically important, and be patient with yourself and be gentle, because I hire a lot of my staff are millennials and a little bit older, and they just want it now. And I said, calm down, everything is not a national crisis, but then I also create spaces for them to grow, to give them a juicy project and let them run with it. And I love doing that because I love watching my eagles soar. And it's wonderful. And that's the teacher in me that wants to step back. I'm not going to give you all the answers. I'm going to let you find the answers and go get me some new stuff. Bring me some fresh ideas here. So that's the good part, and it's an ebb and flow.
Yeah, it is. And I would, to add to that, I'll agree with both of you. Don't be in a hurry to do this. You've got a long time. You may be getting a degree in something else that you want to try your hand in first. And you can still stay involved. Find a place to volunteer. Be a part-time if you have to, intern if you're working somewhere else. Or just find who your mayor is and your council member and your school board members and get to know them. Volunteer on a campaign. If you have to work somewhere else, then spend a couple of weekends a month working on somebody's campaign. It's a great way to get your feet wet, but you don't have to be in a big hurry to do it. You don't have to make your mark tomorrow. I mean, as college students, we all want to get out, get that diploma in hand, and we want to be the belle of the ball the next day. And it doesn't always work that way. It doesn't work that way for young men either, necessarily. So be patient with yourself, as you said, but be passionate. Find your passion, and your passion is going to change throughout your life. Don't get married to one thought and think, I can't live without this the rest of my life, because in 10 years you may go, yeah, I'm not in the right place. And never be afraid to try things, because the greatest growth factor that I've found in all my years is to get over the fear of failure. Because if you haven't had a failure at some point, then you're not trying hard enough and you're not learning.
Great advice. Okay, some questions from anyone. Don't be shy.
This is called Teacher Week.
Yeah, exactly.
I just had a question when you were chatting about the media and about age and grandchildren and things. Do you find that that's not similar with the male elected officials? No one's saying grandfather of 5
No,
or 3
not so
children?
much. Not so much.
Do you
They
think that's
you know,
female characters?
when it gets down to it, they may mention that the guys are grandfathers, but you don't see that very often. The age thing has now, they are putting the guys' ages in also, but rarely they mention that that a man has children or grandchildren.
They do the children thing.
They do
a
the
lot
children
more
side.
on women.
Yeah,
I
a
think.
lot more on women. But you know, you can use that as a positive tool. Because having children that you've worked hard to get up to good standing and worked hard to put them through college, and then they marry and have grandchildren, that's a real source of pride.
That's executive leadership.
That's a
right there.
lot of executive leadership, because if you don't kill your kids or they don't kill you, then you're gonna be able to get through anything with your college kids. But really and truly, they don't ask the men that very much. They just don't. But then the men don't talk about their children and grandchildren. And I have my grandchildren with me. It's not, I have them at the office from time to time, and I don't work on Sundays except rarely, because that's church and family time. And Friday nights are date nights. I take Friday nights, and my husband and I go out or stay home or go out with friends, but city business doesn't get in the way. Otherwise, you end up with no time. You all know.
Yeah.
You work
Yeah.
24/7. And I did the first 2 or 3 years, and now I'm a little more balanced about it.
Yeah, I think we all do that.
Yeah. And you have to find, just because I'm a exercise freak, you better find an hour in your day everywhere you go for meditation or exercise or something. My staff knows they don't touch my exercise time on my calendar.
You actually have a mayor's triathlon.
I do. I have a mayor's triathlon that we do every
Oh.
year. We have rolling town halls on Wednesday nights on bicycles. And in the summer, we do a 3-week rolling tour of the city of Fort Worth. We ride in 21 neighborhoods, and several thousand people have joined us. And some will come and ride a mile or two, and others will ride 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 miles with us. And it's all ages. We do them from little ones on training wheels to grandmother on her tricycle.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, hi. Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm like a first-gen American and a college student, so I really fought for like everything I have, but oftentimes I do get discouraged. So like, how have you guys like learned not to get discouraged and not to get people what they say, or like kind of like things not working out like get you down?
You know, being a new mayor and there's very, she doesn't know what she's doing, all of the, you know, I know who I am and I know whose I am. And that's two different things, because I stay very prayerful. I start my day, for me, it's prayer and meditation, and then I go box too. So, you know, I that's my thing, I box. So being able to stay centered in who you are and circle yourselves with people that are going to raise you up. You know, if you have a circle of friends and they throwing darts at you and throwing rocks at you, get rid of them. Get them out of your circle. Your inner circle needs to be those that are going to lift you up. People who are going to affirm who you want to be, your goals, your ambition. When you talk about them, you know, oh great, what can I do to help you? That's the kind of friend you want.
But you also got to have those good friends. Keep 2 or 3 good friends outside your family who will tell you the truth.
Yes.
I mean, I've got a friend that's been a friend for a long, long time, and she will call you up and say, you are so off base on that. Now, tell me why you made that decision and where this is, because she's brutally honest with me. But she'll also call me and say, that's the best thing you've ever done or said. And then she'll also say, and by the way, your hair looks terrible.
And I love you too.
And I love you too. Or your hair looks great. And you can laugh about that, and your good friends, your sisters, can say that to you. You don't want it in the media, but you do have to. You have to surround yourself with people who are positive, and you also have to know that all things pass. And if you're down and it's been really tough, learn something from it and figure out how to turn it into something good.
And I'll just give you a quick story. I have a circle of women friends in it, and it does include Representative Ayanna Prescott, who just recently, revealed her challenge with alopecia, and the love that's swelling her up to be so bold and to be so brave. And our governor didn't do something so nice yesterday, but he'll have to answer for that. That is that when you are in that tough space, having that circle of women that can help you out. I did my State of the City address the other night, and I had all of these women lined up in front of me. That's what I wanted in my line of view. I could see all of these women who are elected officials, who are women of color, they came out in droves to support me, and that's the thing that gave me so much energy and power. I was on cloud 9 here because I knew I had that support and that love in that room. And, Ayana couldn't make it, but she sent, a little message and said, hey, I got you. And so those are the kinds of places that you try to step outside of yourselves and make sure you connect with those people that are going to give you that extra energy that you need.
The other thing I would say, I agree with all of that work and like finding your space and it's very difficult. Like this is not easy, things to keep yourself centered and make sure that you stay grounded. It's difficult. And but I would also say like you have to have a realization that if you decide to do politics, and I can't really speak to other things, but politics particularly, it is not fair. Okay, so like if you want a fair game, like this is not your place. And I think you almost have to like come to the table knowing that, and then when you are able to win or get some sort of policy piece through, I mean it does make it more sweet. It makes it feel like you outfox the unfairness, and I mean do we work for it to get more fair? Absolutely. Do we work on that? But like you got to get there first, right? And so I think just having a healthy understanding of that, and you have to be able to take that. Because I've known people I've had friends that have done this work and they don't make it because they just cannot take that the table can be so unbalanced, and you have to recognize, but I have to get there to make it more balanced. And so I've always been okay with that, and I think that's important. And I think the women that I frankly do make through, and I mean, again, what I'm excited about is now there's more and more, so we're seeing this less and less. Like, they don't get exhausted by the like toxicity that is like
It's the public, it's
right,
the climate right now.
right, the climate. They don't get, that they don't, I mean, I've had my relatives say, I just don't understand how you can take what people say to you. You just have to. It's not fair. It's just, it is. You just have to have like almost.
The resilience.
Yeah.
too, about
Right.
it,
Right. And like 1% of the population runs for office, so we are weird. I mean, you've got to be a little weird. So I just want to recognize that.
And you made a run while you were mayor. You made a run for governor.
Right. Right. And did not make it.
And not make it, and withdrew, and that must have been a hard decision to say, okay.
Yeah, it was tough. There were 3 women in the race, and so it's kind of interesting now watching the Democratic primary because you can see like this there is right now we still don't have enough supportive women to have that many women. I
think that probably actually hurts.
Absolutely did, and because women we've never had a woman governor, we've never had a woman senator from Ohio, right? It's never happened.
Right.
Never had a woman nominee for governor. Never had a woman. We had one woman nominee for senator. So it's like it is really not there.
The female governor for like 11 days.
Yeah, she was appointed.
Yeah.
Right. Like, does not count.
Right.
Does not count. Does not count. So I think, so my lesson was like, I was actually more hopeful that we're further along, that we could have all these women. You really can't, and at least in Ohio. It could be different in different states. But you take those lessons and you kind of push and push and push, and you recognize, hey, but I think.
It's a learning experience.
Absolutely. Was it fair? No, not fair, but like definitely a great experience with great lessons, and quite frankly, painful too, right? But I think, like you said, like you get, I completely agree with Betsy. If you do not fail, you're not trying. If you really want to be a transformative leader in whatever you're doing, you're going to push. I think we are all here for different reasons because we don't agree with the status quo and we are interested in change. The status quo is status quo because it is easy. And so anytime you're trying to get change, like it is hard. So, but that's what drives us. But it's not a fair table.
And you simply can't let yourself get calloused. Yes. You're going to have lots of things that you have to face and lots of people who say mean things, and the trolls come out on a regular basis, but you can't get calloused about it because the moment you stop caring is the moment you stop serving where you ought to be. You have to have that.
It's
a servant's heart. It's a very fine balance. Nan's right.
Great question.
As my grandmama used to say, never let anybody steal your joy.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Any other questions? Anyone else?
Now we expect to see all of you running for office.
Yeah.
Please run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please move to Ohio and.
Well, if President Warren may be successful,
Any predictions on the,
oh dear.
on the presidential?
Never predict.
Are
You
you-
never predict is
Mayor,
right.
are you working for,
I'm with Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete?
Yeah.
Okay,
Know him, he's the smartest man
Yeah,
I've ever met.
yeah.
He's terrific.
It is, the field for me right now is so large and all of this talent. Sometimes I love watching the debates because I said, everyone is bringing something. And it's just, how do you choose? It's so hard to choose. But I'm also inspired because there are so many people that are serving in one capacity or another that I got a chance to learn a little bit more about, I'm leaning.
Have you not endorsed yet?
No, I haven't. But
stay tuned.
I'm leaning.
I think, we don't like to predict, none of us, but mostly study the candidates yourself at every side of the party, both parties and every office, and you shouldn't vote straight ticket. You should pick the candidate who's gonna deliver what you believe in and what you think is right for your city or your nation. Study it, but do that, but mostly vote.
Yes.
Our voter turnout is abysmal. At the national level, it's better. At the state level, it's some better. At the local level, it's pretty abysmal.
Well, I will use that to make a plug for an event that we're having tomorrow, and Mayor Whaley mentioned the Barbara Lee Family Foundation. We have a partnership with them called Gender on the Ballot, and we are releasing a new poll tomorrow at 5 about women's political participation in 2020. So we'd love to see you at that as well. And I want to thank our team from WPI, Julie, Maylin, Emily, Jessica. Thank you guys for all of your help, and thank you to the mayors. You all were terrific, and we really appreciate you being here. And good luck at the mayor's conference.
Thank you, Ellery.
Thank you.
Yeah.